All right, so chapter 2, the birth and early life of Sri Sarada Devi. And every chapter starts off here with a little Sanskrit uh, verse. This one is Prakritim Paramam, we know that one. O divine nature supreme, remover of all fears, giver of boons, who has taken a human form, who removes the miseries of humanity, who confers joy on those who take refuge in you. O Supreme Mother of the Universe, we bow to you. Indeed, Goddess Mother incarnate. And so I looked into this chapter a little bit. It's going to talk quite a bit about the incarnation. So Sarada Devi was born into a pious Brahmin family. Her father, Ramchandra Mukhopadhyay, was devout, truthful, and upright. Although poor, he would not accept gifts from just anyone. Ramchandra had three brothers, Trilokya, Ishwar, and Nilmatav. Trilokya was a Sanskrit scholar, but he died in his youth. Nilmatav was a bachelor, and Ishwar earned a very small amount of money by performing rituals in some homes in Calcutta. I like being the brother that's just described as a bachelor. It seems like a way of saying he accomplished nothing. I don't know that that's the fact, so don't quote me on that. But the brothers all lived together, and Sharda grew up in a large extended family. Her mother, Shyama Sundari Devi, was deeply spiritual and came from the Majumdar family of Sihar. Sharada's maternal grandfather was Hari Prasad Majumdar, who had 5 sons, Ram Brahma, Tarak, Kedar, Shripati, and Vaikuntha, and 2 daughters, Shyama Sundari and Dayamayi. Sharada later described her parents. My father was a righteous man, a sincere devotee of Ramachandra. He had such a good heart and an amiable nature that anyone passing by his house would be invited to share a smoke. He greatly enjoyed smoking tobacco and would prepare the smoke himself. My mother was kind and guileless and loved to feed people. She carefully managed every detail of the household and collected the things that were necessary for the whole year. She would say, my household is for God and for his devotees. How could I have been born in that family if my mother and father had not practiced religious austerities? So you see just how they include people in their life, which you kind of get that whole thing through her description of her family, that devout sincerity, that love of the divine, and even his smoking, which from this side of the pond we think, oh, that's a vice. But even in that, he showed his kindness and his sharing, bringing others in. And it's an interesting way to think of our life being, to have your home be a center of hospitality, that you're very kind and that you always have your door open. And I know in India, I really experienced that beautiful hospitality, people opening their homes to me, and just actually in Germany too. Germany also has a very strong tradition of inviting people in and feeding them. And of course, in Germany, they give you wine. And if you're ever there and they give you a glass of wine, don't worry, just don't drink any more than half of it and they'll be fine with it. But if you finish the glass of wine, they'll immediately refill it without asking you. And so you'll get yourself into a situation if you keep thinking you're being polite, and then they keep refilling it thinking they're being polite. You've soon got a very drunken politeness going on. So, you have to be careful. But it's that heart. Traditionally in most of the world's cultures, strangers are treated as God. They're given very, very warm hospitality. And so I always thought that the ideal of a household is to be a center of hospitality. I know when I was young, all of my friends, all and my 2 brothers, everybody's friends would always end up at our house because my mom was one of the few moms that stayed home during the day to raise us. And so there were always cookies and Kool-Aid and whatnot at the house. And so It was always the center of activity. There was always a lot of people around there. And I think that that's a beautiful way to practice spiritual life, to practice removing the ego, is to share everything about yourself with others. Make your life a great big tree that all the birds can come and nest in, and keep your eyes open for it. Make it happen. I know up at I'm kind of been thinking a lot about this place called Tapovan up behind Gamuk, where the Ganga comes out of the glacier. And there's a wonderful kutir up on top of the glacier, and the old monk that lives there, it's now a different monk, obviously, than when I was there in 99. But Philip was telling me, this monk would make sure that no traveler passed his door without being invited in for a cup of chai and some treats, some munchable, as it were. And so, this is the kind of family Sri Sarada came from. And really, as the mother of the universe, how perfect for her to have been raised like that, and her understanding that there's no way she could have even been born into that family, which is a way of saying God visits those who have an open heart and who are hospitable and loving and caring and nurturing people in their community, taking care of their community. The birth of an avatar or a saint is often associated with supernatural phenomena. For example, as Ramakrishna's mother, Chandramani, once stood in front of the Yogi Shiva temple in Kamarpukur, she was surrounded by light and later felt that she had conceived a child. At the same time, Ramakrishna's father, Chudaram, was in Gaya. Lord Vishnu appeared before him and said he wanted to be born as his son. Other examples, Kaushalya became pregnant with Ramchandra when she ate sacrificial cake. Lord Vishnu himself entered the womb of Devaki, Krishna's mother, and Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, as the angel Gabriel had foretold. A mystical event is also associated with Sharada's birth. One day, as Shyama Sundari was on her way to visit her family in Sihar, she felt an urge to answer the call of nature. As she squatted in the bushes under a bel tree on the east side of Elapan, she would be mortified. She would be absolutely mortified that we were reading this about her right now. God bless her. All right. As she was in the bushes near the bel tree on the east side of Elapan, which was close to the potter's kiln, she heard jingling sounds from the kiln and saw a little girl of 6 climbing down from the bel tree. The little girl put her tender arms around Shyama Sundari's neck, and she fell down unconscious. She had no idea how long she remained in that condition. Later, her relatives found her under that tree and took her home. From then on, she felt as if she was pregnant. Later, Holy Mother recounted this incident. My birth was like the Master's. My mother went to Sihar to see the deity. On her way home, she suddenly felt an urge to answer the call of nature, and she went into the bushes under a nearby tree. It was a false urge. She felt as if the air entered her womb, making her feel very heavy. She remained in that condition. Then my mother saw a beautiful girl of 5 or 6 years, clad in a red sari, descending from the tree. She put her tender arms around my mother's neck and said, "Here, I come to your home, mother." My mother fell down unconscious and had to be carried home. That girl entered my mother's womb, and thus I was born. It's curious to me how Sri Sarada makes a distinction there between the little girl and herself until the little girl is born of Shyama Sundar, that she doesn't say it was her until after the birth, which I guess would be interesting. I mean, I suppose probably very much like Ramakrishna lacked that sense of I, that probably as a deity, this young girl, Sri Sarada, wouldn't have had an identity as such, as being her, that she would be free of ego in that situation. maybe. Anyway, it's interesting that she doesn't identify with her until after the birth. At that time, Sharada's father, Ramchandra, was in Calcutta, but before he left Jairamati, he had an extraordinary experience. One day when he was napping after his noon meal, he had a vivid dream in which an exquisitely beautiful young girl appeared. She had a golden complexion and was wearing precious jewelry. As she tenderly embraced his neck, he asked who she was. She replied in a musical voice, "You see, I have come to your family." Ramachandra was convinced that this was an auspicious omen, and his interpretation of a dream was that Mother Lakshmi had revealed herself to him so that he could make money performing rituals in Calcutta. When he returned from Calcutta, Shyama Sundari told him about her vision. The simple couple had no doubt about the authenticity of their visions. They were certain that a divine child would be born to them. Ramchandra kept away from his wife until the birth of that child. Sarada Devi, the first child of Ramachandra and Shyama Sundari, was born on Thursday evening, the 22nd of December, 1853. As was customary, as soon as she was born, a conch shell was blown to announce the good news. Her family name was Sharadamani, or Sarada. In course of time, this holy couple had 6 other children, a daughter named Kandambini, 5 sons, Prasanna, Umesh, Kalikumar, Bharata, and Apai. Kadambini was married to Shudharam Chakrabarti in Kokanda village, but she died young without having any children. Umesh died when he was 17 or 18 years old and was unmarried. Abhay died while in medical school, leaving Sarada Devi to look after his wife, Shurabala, and daughter, Radhu, who was taken after his death. Almost all past avatars, except Ramachandra and Buddha, began their lives in sorrow and hardship. It seems that their personal experience of suffering helped them to understand the suffering of humanity and their role in relieving them. The Avatar's primary mission is to replace degraded and corrupt religious practices with life-giving eternal religion. The huts of the poor, not the palaces of the rich, allowed these great souls to become intimate with genuine religious traditions. Generally, it is the poor who hold fast to God and his dispensation. Perhaps that is why the great teachers of the world are drawn to take the birth in poor families. Sarada faced dire poverty from the very beginning of her life. This gave her strength of character, forbearance, practical wisdom, common sense, perseverance, and the ability to adapt to outward circumstances. So that's always, anytime I see a list like that of qualities that were notable in a holy person, I always go through and contemplate each one of them for a moment, and just to kind of, write your compass for a moment, to make sure you don't become one-sided or that you start going after a particular thing, but that all of these attributes, all of these beautiful identities or qualities, fruits of the spirit, as it were, are important in us, and we should watch and nurture them in each other and in ourselves. So this idea, the strength of her character, that integrity inside, that we're not mushy in our beliefs or in our practices, that we're very secure and very stable, very steady. One of the reasons that I became a Vedantist initially was because of my friend Philip. I never asked him any questions about it because I really wasn't interested in spiritual life at that point. But ultimately, when I did ask questions, it was because the whole time that we had shared an apartment together, he would get up in the morning and do his practice in his closet for like an hour and a half. And then he would go and work as a school teacher. And in the afternoon, he'd come home and he would do it again. And it was every day. And I don't know of any time that he missed it back then. And I always thought it was so impressive to me that someone had such a dedicated practice and at the same time didn't feel the need to tell me about it. So I was quite touched by that. So you don't have any idea how your life is affecting the world around you. That you're just practicing. You know all of your faults, and you know how noisy your mind is, and you know how all of how unworthy of anything good you are, right? We all know that, and yet we make the attempt. But in the end, when Shiva passed away in Hollywood, he just carried on. He was just a monk there in the Hollywood Center, lived his life greeting people and being friendly. But at his funeral, the number of people that showed up and the vast variety of people that showed up to that memorial was a real testament to how much difference just one holy person attempting to live a holy life can do, how much good they can give to the world. And most of them will know nothing about it. Shiva probably just went on with his life. It was just his way, and had no idea that he had changed so many lives and had affected so many people, in a popular way.
Yeah, I had a small incident. So one of the times I was staying, I think I went for the weekend, and Gyana Maharaj says, "Oh, the cook is not here today. Can you help cook?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely." So we took out this huge salmon, which was frozen in the freezer. And of course, I was so nervous. There were about like 20, 25 people that I was cooking for, and I had like no idea. So, I put together a meal, and, and everybody ate, of course. And then Shiva Maharaj came to me and he says, "Sister, very nice food. Thank you so much." I mean, he was so effervescent in his thanks, and I was just like so touched, and I won't ever forget his face. But and then he would give lectures, and he'd be crying while he would like sometimes he just understand as if because he was like in tears while he was talking about but I remember of him really fondly, and I really appreciated that he came because I was just so nervous. So yeah.
Yes, no, that was his nature.
Yeah.
And he touched a lot of people. So that strength of character, Sarada, gave her strength of character, forbearance, just that strength in trial, that tenaciousness in living the life, not getting caught up in the particulars of it, like, are you successful or not? That's, we don't live this life to be successful in it. We live this life in order to be natural in it, to return to our nature, to live and exist effortlessly without any goal or any idea of acquiring or holding on, that we're very much in harmony with life around us. Practical wisdom, just that knowing that comes through experience and through opening the heart, that loving that comes from living in the presence, that practical wisdom that knows how to love, like Shiva recognizing Bindu's cooking and coming up and saying something to her, never missing an opportunity, like that. Practical wisdom, common sense, perseverance. Perseverance is I think one of the most important things in spiritual life, is to not get discouraged, to not give up, and not just not give up, but don't lower the bar either. Keep pushing and keep trying. And it's how we learn about grace. It's how we learn about an unconditioned love. Because for ourselves, it's very difficult to get up again and try. If you've fallen 10,000 times, it's hard to take yourself seriously. And inside, you start beating yourself up about it. And inside, it starts breaking down your spiritual life. And because you start assuming the wrong things about God, that God wouldn't want to be around, or God knows I'm not sincere, or God thinks I'm not earnest, and that whole avoidance thing kind of comes into play, and it makes spiritual life very difficult. But it's through perseverance, where we may not feel the forgiveness of God, we may not know the forgiveness of God, but we get up and try anyway. And when Mother then grants you a sensation or an understanding of the reward for that perseverance, you see that it's not God that would ever give up on you. You may give up on yourself, but the divine will never give up on you. And it's through this perseverance, it's through this constant getting up and trying again, that we gain confidence in grace, that we gain confidence in love. And it's through that love and through that grace that our perseverance pays off, that we stand on grace and we stand on love. And that's what brings us to realization, not the things that we were successful at, but the fact that we learned to stand on love, that we learned to stand on grace, that we trusted it. So this perseverance and the ability to adapt to outward circumstances, this is non-attachment. This is non-attachment in disguise. When you can take whatever the circumstance is, no matter how far away from your idea of what should have been, when you're able to take that and just accept it, and not just in a tolerant kind of way, like you don't complain about it, but you actually lean into it. You actually use the change to be more positive or to serve more. You know, it's life is like that. This practice of being in the moment and seeing the moment as perfect is how we grow to understand our identity, right? Because we're told that God is everywhere present and always perfect. So the moment, by logic, is also perfect. That this moment, this is the I am. This is God, and your experience of this moment is your experience of the divine, of God. And so we struggle to see the perfection of the moment, because not every moment is going to be perfect, seemingly. Why? Because we identify with the body. And in identifying with the body, the moment is not going to be perfect for a body. It might be here and there, but not in general. And so then we identify with the mind, and we think we're the mind. And as we know, not all the moments are perfect for the mind either. And so ultimately we try on this new outfit, this idea of being spirit, of being soul. And as we identify with that unchanging self within, that's that silent love, that silent wisdom, that beautiful shrine within, when we find that place and we identify there, then suddenly we find every moment is indeed perfect, and every moment is indeed perfect for the soul. And so this whole practice of being present in the moment, of being aware in the moment, will teach us to identify with soul, because it's only from that knowledge and from that perspective that the moment becomes perfect, and that every moment that God is seen everywhere. Her father owned some agricultural land on which he grew rice and cotton, but it was not productive enough to feed the whole family. He had to supplement his income by performing worship in private homes. Shama Sundari and little Sarada would pick cotton from the field and with it make the sacred threads worn by Brahmins, thus contributing to the family income. Later, Sarada recalled, "I would wade neck deep into the water to cut grass for the cattle. I used to carry puffed rice to the field for refreshment for the workers. One year, the paddy crop was destroyed by locusts, and I gleaned rice stalks from one field after another. I would accompany my brothers to bathe in the Amodar River, which was the Ganges to us. After bathing, we would sit on the bank and eat puffed rice before returning home. I was always attracted to the Ganges." Yeah, so always that longing was always there for her. But you see that service, taking the food out to the workers in the field, and also that adjusting to circumstances. The whole crop was destroyed by the locusts, and so what did she do? She went and gleaned. Gleaned is to when a rice field or a wheat field has been harvested, there always will be a ring around the edges that were missed, that the machine didn't get to, and gleaning, or the people didn't get to, whatever was left standing. And then gleaning is going and taking the rice or the wheat or whatever field, whatever crop it is, taking whatever was left unharvested. And actually, in the Jewish tradition, they were instructed by the divine, actually, in the Jewish tradition, to be sloppy about harvesting a field, to purposely leave a certain amount of remnant behind, so that the poor could come and have something to eat, could come and would have at least somewhere where they could get some food for home. And so, here seeing that Chaturda was fed that way for a while. When divine beings assume a human form, guardian angels accompany them. Reminiscing about her early life, Holy Mother once said, "A young girl resembling me used to walk with me and to help me in my work. We had great fun together, but she would disappear as soon as anyone else approached. This experience continued until I was 10 or 11 years old. When I entered a pond to cut grass for the cattle, this girl went with me. As I cut and took one bundle to the bank and returned to the water for more grass, I found that she had already another bundle ready for me." Sarada learned how to read and write, but it was not considered important to educate girls in those days. Later, she described her struggle to learn. I don't think all of us get one of these guardian angels to come help us with our chores like that. But it is, we can turn the volume down a little bit and understand that God is always present with us to make our life to be helpful and to make our life more bearable. That's why Jesus would say something, take my yoke upon you, for my burden is light. And so that idea that the company of the beloved in a real way will take care of your life if you trust it, if you're willing to surrender to it and accept whatever comes. You have to do the dangerous part. You have to accept what may or may not come to do that. But trust in the divine. There's a place where Jesus is giving the instructions to his disciples, and he's saying to them, do not lay up anything for yourselves. And he says, look at the birds of the air. They don't harvest, they don't reap, and yet your Father takes care of each one of them. And he says, look at the flowers of the field. He said, they don't toil or spin, and yet you will find that even Solomon in all of his glory was not clothed as one of these flowers. So there's this idea of depending on the Lord and having that company, not just in the imaginary friend kind of way, but actually involved in your day-to-day. And the way to do that is to depend on the divine and to like in the situation with Girish Ghosh, where he gave the Lord his power of attorney, so he couldn't do anything from that point forward without checking in with Thakur, with Ramakrishna. And so, that's how we develop that in our lives as well. It's like we keep an active prayer life going all the time at all the different levels. There's that first level of just talking to the Lord out loud and just praying as if he's another person in the room. And then there's that whole mental prayer where you're just in the head having a conversation, imagining God, imagining presence, imagining company, like that. And then, of course, there's the third one where you're just established in this deep silence of openness within the heart, where the divine is invited to read all of your inner life and inner world, and you live in that awareness with the divine. So at all three of those levels, God is present and helpful, and you can and should rely on her. You should and can count on her and include her. And so don't make plans without running them by the divine. Don't execute ideas without sharing them and double checking them with the divine. Don't make plans until you've cleared them with the divine. Brahmananda in the Eternal Companion talks about that. He said to one of the brahmacharis, I don't do anything before getting permission from the divine to do it, right? And so really to live with that awareness, that's what it is to walk with the beloved. and to count on the divine, so that you don't mistake yourself as the doer. You don't mistake yourself as the one who is successful in getting things finished, but you constantly have that awareness and that seeing that it is the divine working out all of these things for us to enjoy and for life to come together, so that you can more easily see that it was true when the time comes that you were never the doer, that the divine has done everything. So Sarada learned how to read and write, and later she described her struggle to learn this. I accompanied my brother Prasanna and cousin Ramnath to our village primary school and learned the alphabet. In Karmarpur, probably in 1867, Lakshmi, who was Ramakrishna's niece, and I read Varna Parache, Part 1, the first primary book by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. But Hriday, the master's nephew, snatched away my book. He said, "Women should not learn to read and write. Are you going to read dramas and novels later?" Lakshmi was the favorite daughter of the family, so she did not have to give up her book. I secretly paid 1 anna for another copy. Lakshmi would study in the school and then teach me when she returned. While I was in Dakshineshwar, I actually learned well. When the master had to go to Shyamapur for treatment in the fall of 1885, I was left alone. A girl from Bhava Mukherjee's family would come to bathe in the Ganges daily, and she would sometimes stay with me for a long time. She used to give me lessons and then test me on what I had learned. I shared vegetables with her and other things that I received from the temple authorities. So this is an insight to her also. She didn't settle for what was socially acceptable for a woman. She educated herself, even in a culture that was not interested in educating women. And when she was discouraged by it, when one of the men came along and yelled at her and takes her book away, she doesn't just demurely crumple. She goes out and buys another copy and keeps it secret and comes up with ways of learning, ways of growing, ways of expanding. And this is a good teaching for us, for the divine, because we're not always in circumstances where our partners or our parents or our siblings or our friends accept spiritual life or accept our efforts to grow and expand. But it's still our fire within, and we express it however we can. We make a space for it. We dedicate ourselves to these things and make them happen, in the world. Chaturda and Lakshmi studied up to Varna Parachai, Part 2, the second primary book by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, with Sharat, a young son of Pitambar Samanta, the store manager of the Dakshineshwar temple. Ramakrishna arranged this so that they could read the Ramayana and other holy books. Chaturda also learned how to write. People learn more about life through observation and experience than in a classroom. Little Chaturda's earliest training began in her village, where she studied the people around her. Her observations eventually helped her to become a great teacher. That observation would have come because of her practice of the presence. Seeing the divine everywhere, her awareness. Because you see it in Thakur also. Thakur was acutely aware of the people around him, of his environment. There was no absent-mindedness in that at all, except for those times where he was in a spiritual mood and couldn't do something on his own, but that he was always aware of where everything was, and he was extremely observant of people. And, part of that is really helpful, is extremely helpful in our own spiritual life, because you can learn from the lives of others as well. You can see how they live their life, and you can observe the effects of it. You can see what's good for a life and what's not good for a life. And, Ramakrishna says a man who can learn through the mistakes of others is deeply blessed, much more so than the man who has to make the life mistakes himself in order to learn from them. And so we should have that observation and that awareness. It's part and parcel. It's not something you really would have to work on. It's part and parcel of working on being aware of awareness. awareness, just that inner practice of being aware of the presence of the divine, opens up these avenues, these notices where you see everything as it is, and you get to understand. And not only that, but then when you're in a situation, when Mother brings people to you for help or for learning, you're in a situation where you've observed life, and you can hear their song, and you can see what's necessary. Mother gives you those eyes to be able to read someone quite carefully. And so this awareness blossoms in many ways. But it's important to know that all of these virtues, they come to us naturally. We don't go practicing them one by one. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but that's not what we're after. We're not looking to mimic holy people. We're looking to become holy people. And so that means getting in touch with that divine self, which naturally produces virtue. That divine self in you, which naturally performs acts of love, acts of compassion, and to not get caught up in the ego, which is what turns things selfish. It takes that same love and makes it selfish. It takes that same love and makes barriers and protections for itself. But for the person seeking the spiritual life, that same love removes barriers and removes protections and opens to others and is sensitive to others. So her observations eventually helped her to become a great teacher. Sri Sarada's lack of formal education did not stunt her intellectual development. She was born with divine qualities such as purity, humility, self-control, self-sacrifice, nonviolence, truthfulness, modesty, detachment, compassion, courage, forgiveness, and fortitude. Another list. Another beautiful list. And they're one to think about. Let's go through and look at them real quick. Such as purity. Purity is always that lack of me and mine. To just not have a mind that's thinking about ourselves all the time, which is very hard. I mean, most of us, I know myself, we've built an entire universe that centers around ourselves. Everything we think about and talk about has to do with ourselves. And so to really build a character that doesn't think about itself is a beautiful accomplishment, is really a stunning work of art to offer to the mother. And so here Sarada has this great inner purity, just this wonderful freedom of a mind that isn't self-absorbed. Purity, humility, that never assuming the better for yourself. Jesus says, so if you go to a banquet, always sit in the most humble seat and get invited to move up to higher seats if it's appropriate, but never assume the higher seat for yourself in case the more important person comes along and you're asked to step down, which is a great humiliation. So just never assuming ourselves first, always looking to the needs of others around us. I could embarrass Greg and say that I really, when we were in the monastery, one of the characteristics about him, I can't see him on my screen, but I'm trying to make him blush. But I remember sitting at the dinner table and all these men sitting around the table eating. And Greg just had this real knack. And I don't think it was natural. I think it was just 20 years in the monastery that taught him. He would pass things to people before they asked for them. He was just so aware of what people were doing at the table and what they needed and what was necessary, that he was proactive. And I was always amazed at that because, I would just sit and eat. Just like, yeah, give me my food. But he was constantly scanning the table, seeing whose plate was needing more vegetables, seeing who needed more soup or dal, seeing who needed more salt, and was just a great example to me at that time. We were both brahmacharis way back then, in our 30s nonetheless. Anyway, that was my introduction to this humility and this service of others. Self-control. Vivekananda said that we only need to teach our children two things for education. He said we need to teach them how to control themselves and how to concentrate. Those are the only two things that we really need to teach, because he said Maya will fall at the feet of a person who has mastered both himself and his concentration, who can concentrate. You can have anything in Maya that you want if you have those two. Self-sacrifice. Yeah, self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice is best done when no one knows about it. You know, it's you give that, you know, you've divided the pizza equally and there's one more piece left and it's actually yours, but you can tell the other person's hungry. And so you just naturally reach up to the pizza and give it to the other person without saying anything at all. Just make it a natural act. You know, this is self-sacrifice, giving up your own needs for the helpfulness of others to serve anyone else. And so it's a wonderful mark. Non-violence. This non-violence covers a lot of different areas. I mean, non-violence covers your inner world also, your inner kindness, you know, how kind you are to yourself. Are you violent toward yourself when you keep making mistakes or when you keep doing your stupid things over and over again? Or are you gentle with yourself, encouraging to yourself, helpful to yourself? You know, that's where we start in this life. You're never going to be able to be kind to others if you haven't learned to be kind to yourself. And so that inner voice should always be respectful and always be encouraging. And thoughts about yourself should always be encouraging and always be hopeful. You should believe in yourself. You should be the last person in the room believing in yourself. You know, because you won't be able to believe in others. You won't be able to serve others. You won't be able to love others without first learning how this is inside. And the wonderful thing inside is the way that we do that is not by changing our behavior toward ourselves, but to recognize ourselves as we are. When you're addressing yourself in your thoughts, who is it that's listening? It's the self, the capital S, mother, right? And so if you're sitting there saying, you stupid moron, I can't believe you've done that for the 400th time. You stupid weakling, you should give this up and just, you know, go back to the world and blah, blah, blah. Who are you talking to? You're not talking to a self that's separate from everything else. You're talking to the beloved, to the divine. And so this practice of nonviolence is, again, a practice of seeing the divine, seeing them first within yourself, and then you will naturally see them in others, because what you see in yourself, you see in others. That's one of the hardest teachings of Mother, you know, when she says a baby has no thief, sees no thief, that you can't see the vice in others unless it exists within you. And so one great practice of sadhana, you know, I've done it once or twice, is pick out somebody who just annoys the bejesus out of you, someone you just don't like, you know, and just sit there and write a paragraph listing all of their faults, all the things that they mess up on and all the things they're stupid about and all the things that they've done wrong and how annoying all of them are. And then go through and realize that every single thing in there you're guilty of. And what's really hard to face is the truth of that. When you start realizing, if you sit there and honestly think about it enough, you can remember times when you have done every single one of the things on your list. And so it's always good for humility. If you're one of those fault finders with people, if you're one of those people who wants things done in this way only, or get out of my kitchen, or worse than that, if you're in the temple kitchen and you're that person who knows how everything is done, and so you're running around telling everyone, if you're that kind of person or have ever felt that you might be that kind of person, this is a great exercise for you. It will really help you stop that habit, because you'll realize this is very embarrassing, because all the swamis will be hearing you and watching you do that, and all the swamis are sitting there thinking, that's interesting. Right? Because that's the way we grow, that's the way we change. So this nonviolence, this truthfulness, you know, Thakur says this age, that truthfulness is the real austerity for this age. Being what you are. right? This age, especially in this culture, everybody has an image that's very dressed up. You know, and Jesus has this wonderful description. He says it's like a whitewashed tomb. You know, that outside it's all nice and white and sparkly clean, but inside it's full of dead men's bones. You know, we don't want to be religious. We want to be spiritual. We don't want to be well behaved. We want to be children of light. You know, we don't want to mimic great people. We want to be a heart, a lover of God in everything. And so this truthfulness is very important. Always be what you are. Always take the opportunity to be honest. You know, don't. I say it even hurts to think about it. Those times where, you know, someone's giving you credit for something you didn't really do. And what will you do? Will you accept that credit? Or will you give it to the person who deserves it? And by saying, oh, I'd love to take credit for that, but I didn't do it. That was that other person, you know. So this truthfulness, modesty, we all know modesty. Modesty is just not making yourself attractive. Really modesty is having no concern for what others are thinking about you. You know, just you're just going on being a beautiful human being. You're not presenting yourself in any way. Detachment, that's the silent mind. Real detachment is just the silent mind, right? All attachment is thinking, bringing the past into the moment. That's what attachment is. All attachment is bringing your loves of the past into the moment. So freedom, you know, Holy Mother had that internal freedom going on, that absolute detachment. Compassion, which is just the expression of love. To see God in someone else is to practice compassion, to see the beloved in their eyes and to serve them because of it. That's the purest form of compassion. Courage is oneness, right? Courage, the only way to have courage is to see the oneness. As long as you see other, as long as you see separation, there's fear of other. There's an unknown quantity there that you have to face and work with. But courage is seeing the oneness and acting accordingly, you know, letting go of that fear of the other, overcoming, transcending that fear of others. Forgiveness, yes, forgiveness. Just that. Forgiveness is lack of ego. You know, forgiveness is only inhibited by an egoistic person. We should always be ready and quick to forgive. And forgiving means forgetting, right? It means that you've let go completely of that perceived wrong that was done to you.
Swami?
And, yes.
You shouldn't forget that the scorpion bites.
Yeah.
You could forgive the scorpion, but I wouldn't want to forget completely. You know what I mean? And same thing with people.
Well, you know, at different levels, different things. There's a time when what you're saying is true, but what you're saying is not the ideal. And I'm thinking of course, the scorpion story to make that point. You know, there was that. I think I've told the story before, but there was that sage and his disciple sitting on the riverbank meditating, and the young disciple was watching his teacher, and there was a scorpion climbing up a big blade of grass, and it would get out on the end of that grass and fall off into the water. And the teacher reached down, picked the scorpion up in its hand and put it on the bank, and immediately the scorpion stung him. And so they go back to their meditation, and the scorpion does this thing again, climbs up on another piece of grass and falls off into the river. And the teacher again reaches down, picks the scorpion up, puts it on the shore, and again he gets stung by the scorpion. This happens a third time, and the teacher's student can't take it anymore. He's like, "Why are you doing that? The thing has stung you twice. Now it stung you 3 times. And still, you went and did such a stupid thing." And the teacher says to him, oh, see, it is the nature of the scorpion to sting. It is my nature to alleviate suffering. So I alleviate suffering and he stings. And on we go together in this world. That's one perspective. That's the ideal perspective. Now, what you're saying also is covered by the story from Thakur where, there is a tiger god. We should love and respect that tiger god, but you do it from a distance. You don't run up and hug the tiger. It's not a safe thing to do. But you also don't hold the tiger's nature against him. You respect him from a distance. You don't hate tigers, right? So somewhere in those two examples will lie the answer to all the examples that you run into in life.
Well,
but the ideal,
with forgiveness, you don't have to approve to forgive.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, we're supposed to seek good company.
Right. No, we definitely want to seek good company. And there is a one of the things that Mother had here was this practical wisdom. This practical wisdom is knowing how to show love appropriately in all situations. So yes, you can be wronged by someone and you forgive them. That like if you had a partner who was abusive to you, you would forgive them. But there may come a time where for your safety, you have to separate from them. You have to get some space, so where you can honor them from a distance. You can hug them from a distance, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
that was my point. Yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely have to be aware, but always keep the ideal high. Go for the ideal as much as possible.
No, but Swami, I was objecting to the forgetting. You want to remember that partner is bad news.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, trivial things like you didn't return my phone call and I'm angry and I forgive you and I'm dropping it. I'm not going to think about, like little things I can see forgetting.
Right.
I'm not going to ruminate on how reach far, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of evidence in the scriptures that this forgetting is a good idea. That you don't attach to things, even your own well-being. But there is a wisdom, there is a practical wisdom in there that is necessary to a certain extent. But I can also think of ways where that's not, where in an ideal, to forgive and forget, to absolutely wipe it from your mind. Yes, you might be in danger again, but I think that Mother takes care of souls like that. That's a dangerous thing to say too, but I believe that. I think that without extenuating circumstances, forgive and forget. If there's something in a situation where you're in danger or it's irresponsible to do that, then still forget the wrong, forget the offense, and maybe remember the deed, but forget your offense at it, separate it from your ego, from self, and maybe that would be a good middle ground. Because Jesus, he's quite clear about the forgiveness. Peter says, well, what if somebody keeps doing you the wrong thing over and over and over again? And Jesus says, as long as they apologize, keep forgiving them.
Oh, I'm fine with the forgive. I'm just going to have to think about the forget.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you if anything comes to me.
I would appreciate it. It's a worthwhile conversation, and we can share if anybody has ideas about it, email me. Let's talk about it, come up with a nice, strong enduring instruction on how to deal with that. But living in the moment requires forgetfulness. It requires leaving the past to the past and the future to the future and being only present. And that's what frees up frees us up. That's what that is true freedom, when you're not taking in all the implications from past life, but all of that stuff becomes part of a wisdom within you anyway, available to you in the moment. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. There's caution. And I think the tiger god would take care of situations like that. If you need to get out of the situation, get out of the situation. But don't do it with a grudge. Don't walk out of the situation with an anger and with a resentfulness and with a blackness to it. Forgive the person, forget the offense, and then make the change you need to do and move on. But leave the blackness behind. Forget the offense. Remember the deed, maybe for safety's sake, but forget the offense. So modesty, detachment, compassion, courage, forgiveness, and fortitude. Her parents taught her how to love and to serve others, how to be content with an austere life. She also received practical lessons while helping her father during his worship, cooking and cleaning with her mother, and helping to raise her younger siblings. In addition, she became acquainted with the spiritual culture of India by listening to devotional songs that were sung by minstrels and religious mendicants. She participated in the religious festivals of her village and watched dramas based on the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the lives of saints, which left a deep impression on her young mind. She received firsthand experience of reality as she shared the simple life of the villagers, their struggles for existence, their poverty, and their deaths. This helped her develop a loving and deep understanding of humanity. So, she had a very beautiful upbringing. This is the upbringing that would be delightful if all of us had the ability, to grow up in such a positive and helpful environment like that. But you see, it's still a humble beginning for her. There's nothing outrageous about her. The wonder of the Divine Mother was her simplicity and her modesty. The fact that she was this incarnation of God as mother, and that she hid behind a screen. That if you want to, I once was asked for a retreat in DC one year. I was asked to give a 10-minute talk on mother and renunciation. And so I remember going and doing a search for renunciation and Sri Sarada Devi, or Holy Mother, in all of the writings. And I came up empty. Nothing comes up with that. I was like, what in the world is that about? And I realized, for if you want to see renunciation in Holy Mother, you have to search for chapatis. Because chapatis were her symbol of renunciation in a big way. I remember the devotees would show up at 10 o'clock at night, and they'd walk by the Nahabat where they knew she was, and they would yell, I'll have 5 chapatis, and some vegetables, and Mother, without batting an eye, would get up, start the fire, roll out the flour, chop up the vegetables, and make a meal for this cad, who announced himself with the demand for food. It's like that is Mother's humility. That's a mother's humility. And I think, it's why it's important for God to be recognized as Mother as well as Father, is that most of this heartfelt service is done by the Mother. Most of this giving up of self is done by the Mother. It's the mother that's with that child, and at least traditionally, not always, but in by and large, the mother is the symbol of this compassion, of this selflessness, of this grace, of this refusal to give up on her child. I've seen it again and again, these families where one of the children is a drug addict. It's always the mother that's running after that person, always the mother that people are chastising for not taking care of herself, because she just won't give up on that son, So this is God as mother, and to see Sarada Devi choosing a family of this caliber, and then choosing a family where she would be raised in this way, where she was in poor conditions, but always looking to be helpful, always looking to serve, always looking to play her part and to do her part well, is a significant but humble characteristics that we should definitely recognize in mother.